What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today I wanted to shout Ariados in the Open Great League. This Pokemon is one of the most interesting picks we have, with the ability to not only debuff your opponent's attack stat, but boost your own using Trailblaze. This Pokemon's also a fantastic core breaker to the water types, the fighters, the grass types, and even the fairies. So a very strong Pokemon, and I wanted to see if it was any good currently in the meta. If you've been enjoying these videos, I'd really appreciate it if you leave a like and subscribe. It helps a ton with the channel. But without further ado, let's get into the battles and see what Ariados can do. All right, let's get right on into game number one. Ariados in the lead up against a Venusaur, one of the best lead matchups you could possibly see. We resist every single fast and charge move this Pokemon's going to be throwing, especially the grass-type moves do almost nothing to us. Sludge Bomb is only single resisted, though, so likely going to be the move that they are going to throw. With that said, we can outpace them and out-CMP them to these lunges. This Pokemon is not going to want to take another attack, and our Ariados is not going to take anything after this debuff with this Sludge Bomb. Our opponent does throw the right move, and then they come in with the Shadow Drapion. We can go for a lunge and then swap out to our Diggersby to just absorb all of the damage, go for Fire Punch against them, and potentially also go for Fire Punch against that Venusaur as well if we need to. Our opponent does end up letting the lunge go, which means that now they are definitely in either Quick Attack down range or just Fire Punch range if you don't want to let them get to another move here. But all we need to do is get to back-to-back Fire Punches so we can knock out this Drapion and then knock out that Venusaur if they come back in with it. Our opponent does have yet another Aqua Tail here. I'm going to overfarm just a little bit more, go for this Fire Punch, but a little bit of a miscount by me, meaning that another Aqua Tail will be reached. It's still fine, we have back-to-back Fire Punches, but I should have thrown either a little bit sooner or just later to overfarm a bit more energy. Fire Punch will knock out the Shadow Drapion. When that Venusaur comes back in, if it comes back in, that is, we have that Fire Punch ready to go, but we do actually see their third Pokemon. It is going to be a Dugong, yet another Pokemon that Ariados has a ton of play into. Trailblaze is super effective against them. It could ramp up, but I know there is that Venusaur in the backline, so I might as well just bring in my Shadow Feraligatr here, absorb the Ice Heck Fast Food Pressure, go for Shadow Claw and Hydro Cannons to try to knock them out. They try to catch a move on Venusaur, but that is totally fine. At this point, all I have to do is come in with our Ariados, try to farm them down, or if I can't farm them down, through a charge move at the last second and get a shield or a knockout, and then our Gator and Ariados combo should be able to close out this game. We don't quite get the farm down, it looks like here, but Trailblaze could potentially get a shield KO if they do opt to shield this attack up. Trailblaze is going to boost our attack stat, get a shield, and knock out the Dugong. That is exactly what we want to see, or knock out the Venusaur rather. Dugong comes back in, and because we have a boosted lunge, this Dugong has nowhere to go. Our opponent, realizing that, ends up top lefting. GG's to them. Great showing, game number one for our Ariados. A little bit of a less good showing here. It's a Corsola in the lead, a Pokemon that does resist our poison type damage, although our Trailblazes are neutral, so maybe we can make something happen later on if we can start ramping up. We'll have to see what our opponent does. I'm a little bit sad to see a Shadow Marowak swapped into our Shadow Feraligatr. I know that likely means that in the back it's going to be something even weaker to our Shadow Gator than this Pokemon, so I don't really know what we want to do right now. In comes the Bone Club. At this point, I'm going to take that shield advantage, go for a Trailblaze against this Marowak, and then maybe start ramping up Trailblazes once again against that Corsola. I don't know at this point, though. It's going to be kind of risky because they also have the access to the move Rock Side here, which would basically one-shot us. I have to shield it up. They bait us with a Bone Club. I'm going to overfarm still just a little bit more, go for a Trailblaze, knock out this Marowak, and see what we can do from here. Ariados is going to have a lot of work to put in this game if we want any chance. I'm also a little bit scared that our Diggersby is going to just be hard countered in the backline because of the Corsola lead. I guess it's not a hard counter, but it's definitely not what we wanted to see here. It's going to be their own Diggersby, a Pokemon that is at least good enough in this matchup that they are likely going to be able to neutralize me, and that Corsola in the backline is still going to be a menace. We got the attack drop. That's pretty good for us. We actually needed a very early attack drop if we wanted any chance. We also dodged the debuff ourselves. There might be a chance here, but the thing is, Corsola is so bulky that even if somehow we get through their Diggersby, and even if somehow we have, like, I don't know, 25% of our health left over, it's not really going to matter. I think they still have us here just because we have no damage against that Pokemon. Diggersby is only good against Corsola because you resist their damage, but if you're low enough, Corsola can still go for Astonish and Power Gem to knock us out. So this is still looking kind of dicey. I do have a Trailblaze loaded. I can try to combo play them here potentially. Let's see what they're going to do, but they call the combo play after I go for it. This is not looking great at all. This Trailblaze will do very little damage to Corsola. Maybe I can reach another one here and start ramping up my damage. Maybe I can go for a Scorching Sands as well against their Diggersby later on, but at this point I do have to shield up this attack and see what I can do. I know at this point I do have to reach two more Trailblazes to knock them out, this one plus the next, if I want any chance to knock out this Corsola. Trailblaze does end up doing a decent chunk of damage after that first boost, but now they get a full Astonish down, and because I could not get that next Trailblaze off, they are just barely able to farm us down. GG's to our opponent. Next matchup, a Gastrodon in the lead. We have Trailblaze, which is super effective for this Pokemon, but the thing is they have a lot of neutral fast and charge move pressure against us too, so it's not exactly a one-sided matchup. Our opponent instantly throws a Body Slam here, which is very interesting. It means they're probably pretty scared of our Ariados in the backline. I'm going to go for a Trailblaze, but our opponent making a fantastic catch with their Dunsparce is going to drain a lot of our energy. With that said, we can overfarm here, get a bit of our energy back, come in with our Diggersby, and absorb all of the damage this Dunsparce is going to throw. Diggersby is one of the best answers to Dunsparce in the game, mainly because we resist the rollout, and because we're so bulky that drill runs, despite being a very efficient move, do very little damage to Diggersby. In comes yet another move where they could have thrown there, but they end up overfarming a bit, which makes me kind of worried. They might be trying to dance around the switch clock right now, save this energy for the backline, and as you can see, I have a Shadow for Alligator in the back, right? We're a little bit ABA weak to Dunsparce, so I don't want to give this thing an opportunity to swap out, because I don't know how I'd finish this thing off if they do end up storing this energy. So I'm just going to instantly throw the Fire Punch, get this thing out of here, and see what we can do to finish off this game. Fire Punch is going to knock out or draw a shield. They do let their Dunsparce go, and likely going to see that Gastrodon come back in, but it might be their third Pokemon as well, depending on what they have, and it is going to be revealed as a Talonflame, a Pokemon that we don't want anything to do with our Ariados, but our Shadow for Alligator has a lot of play. With that said, we also know this Pokemon Up Energy can do a lot of damage to Shadow for Alligator. I do land that Scorching Sands though, putting them below half HP, and they have to throw a move before I get a Fire Punch off, or else they would be forced to shield against our Diggersby. Fly does knock us out, so we know they likely don't have Flame Charge, and now I have to go for a Shadow Claw down, or reach 3 charge moves against this Pokemon if I want any chance to knock them out. If they ever swap out to their Gastrodon, we have energy on Ariados, we should probably swap as well, go for a Trailblaze, try to get a shield or get a KO against this Pokemon. Let's see what our opponent wants to do right now. Do they shield, or do they let it go? They let it go, which does a massive amount of damage, and unfortunately they do survive long enough here to reach a Body Slam. But at this point, our Gator should be able to win this game, but our opponent also undercharges that, tries to get a bit more of an energy lead on their Talonflame. Very smart play. But because of that undercharge, I can also get a lunge, a boosted lunge that is, into this Talonflame. They have to shield this up. If they don't, then they're going to get Shadow Clawed down so easily. And if they do shield it up, there's a good chance I can just reach 2 Hydro Cannons and knock them out that way. At this point, though, I know that we get the Shadow Claw down, so just go for the fast move pressure there, and we can win the game. GG's to our opponent. Alright, next matchup, Ariados up against a Wigglytuff, a Pokemon that is very good for us to see here, and our opponent safe swapping in a Shadow Marowak. This Pokemon does have a lot of neutral pressure into us. We don't actually have a ground resist in this team, but we have a lot of ways to deal with it. We have super effective Hydro Cannon, super effective Trailblaze. We also have Lunge to debuff their attack stat. They do opt to let that go, and because they do, I'm going to come in with our Diggersby, absorb debuffed Bone Clubs, and now they're in range of Fire Punch to knock them out. Diggersby will also be able to put in a lot of work against that Wigglytuff if they come back in with it, which is going to be very helpful here. In comes a Bone Club once again. We can go for a Fire Punch at any time now to knock them out if we wanted to, but I want to overfarm as much as possible here to make sure I have energy for that Wigglytuff, because I know these debuffed Mudslaps are likely to do a little bit less damage than those charms from Wigglytuff if they do come back in. What is our opponent going to do here? Do they come back in Wiggles, or do we see the third Pokemon? It is going to be Wigglytuff that comes back in here, and I don't really know what to do. It could be a double Mudslap team, and if that was the case, I'd probably want to just instantly swap out to our Ariados right now, but since I don't know that, since it could be like a Drifloon in the backline, I'm going to stay in here and just go for another Scorching Sands, try to whittle this Pokemon down, and see how our opponent plays this out. Scorching Sand's going to come through and get that shield from this Wigglytuff here, and because they opted to shield, I feel like it's a little bit easier for me to shield myself here and make sure that our Ariados is alive just in case we need it. At this point in the one shield matchup, our Shadow for Alligator should be able to deal with most things in the backline, especially if there's a Drifloon, but it's not even a Drifloon here. Probably the best possible Pokemon to see. It's once again a Gastrodon, a Pokemon that Trailblaze, if it ends up landing, will nearly one-shot. They opt to shield that first attack up. Honestly, a bit of a mistake in my opinion. The first Trailblaze does not quite one-shot a Gastrodon. The second one is now going to be guaranteed to knock them out, which means Gastrodon goes down. We are a double boosted Ariados against a Wigglytuff. Don't even need our Shadow for Alligator for that one. All right, next matchup here, a Shadow Drapion in the lead. A very neutral matchup here. Let's see if our opponent knows how to play this matchup out. It looks like they don't play it out as efficiently as they could. Normally, the way you want to play this out is you go for the Aqua Tail first, because your first Crunch is always going to be debuffed anyway, so you might as well get a non-debuffed Aqua Tail through before a debuff does end up coming through. Crunch is now going to land. It's not going to do too much damage to us after that debuff, but it still does put us below half HP because Ariados is a little bit squishy. Our opponent throwing yet another charge move against us, likely going to be an Aqua Tail, but I will shield this up. I probably should just shield up the Crunch, honestly, because that is going to be doing more damage to us. But now I'm going to go for the Trailblaze and see if Ariados can knock them out or draw a shield. The thing is, normally Ariados is going to have a lot of play to the backlines of Drapions. Normally it's going to be, I guess, Marowak in this case, but it could also be Pokemon like Azumarill, Dugong for Alligator, so I want to keep it around if we can. Trailblaze likely will draw a shield, so I probably should have gone for Lunge there, but it's still fine. Our opponent ends up having a Shadow Annihilate in the backline. That is such a scary Pokemon to see. I didn't want to let our Ariados go completely down, but honestly, giving up Switch Advantage could be a very bad thing for us. We end up debuffing the attack stat here, which could help us out quite a bit. Now they're going to be forced to throw either an Ice Punch or a Close Combat to knock us out. With that said, if they do Close Combat us, we can go for a full Shadow Claw down, and even though normally a Alolan Marowak, or no, Cantonian Marowak, that is a very good answer, or not good answer, but it's a hard matchup sometimes to win as the Shadow for Alligator. It's going to be a very easy matchup to win if you have a Hydro Cannon loaded. We could one-shot them there, and our opponent realizing that ends up top lefting. All right, next matchup here is Shadow Annihilate once again on our screen, this time in the lead. We're going to see how our Bug and Poison type Pokemon can take out this fighter. It is a decent matchup for us. We do resist the fast moves, but the Annihilate obviously does have access to Rage Fist, which will boost our attack over time, but our opponent, after letting us go for a boost here, swaps out to a B-Barrel. This is a very interesting thing to see right now, B-Barrel being a bit of a core breaker actually for our whole team. Lunge is going to be boosted. Our opponent does opt to shield it up here, and I don't really know what to do right now. I'm going to try to store some energy, maybe make a catch on a Surf with our Feraligatr. If we can do that, this could be kind of good for us. In comes yet another charge move. It's going to be a Trailblaze this time, guarantee either a shield or a knockout. I could probably knock out with a Lunge, honestly, from this point, but maybe not, honestly. Probably a good thing to go for Trailblaze, just to guarantee that shield, and then catch the attack on our Shadow Feraligatr. It's a Surf, a debuffed Surf at that, so it's not going to do too much damage, but B-Barrel is going to be able to resist our Shadow Claws and our Hydro Cannons, making it a little tricky to take out. Our opponent throwing likely Hyper Fang at this point. We will shield it up, and if that Annihilate comes back in, we can have a Hydro Cannon for it, but they don't bring in the Annihilate. It's going to be an Azumarill. So now we know their full team. It's B-Barrel, Azumarill, and Shadow Annihilate. That means that our Diggersby has almost nowhere to go right now. Can we win this game? I have a Hydro Cannon once again ready for this Azumarill. We're going to try to swap out if possible here, maybe catch a charge move on our Ariados and save as much HP and energy on our Feraligatr as we can. Our opponent is going to be forced into throwing a move here, and the way that I see it, we did land that Trailblaze against that Annihilate. So if I build up enough energy on our Diggersby, there's a chance I can knock out Annihilate with a charge move from Diggersby later on this game. Fire Punch might not be enough, but if I see that Annihilate come back in, I'm going to have to go for Fire Punch to guarantee that they don't close combat us. If they do, we'd get one shot, and then that would be a very bad spot to be in. Fire Punch is going to end up landing. It does a massive amount of damage, and at this point, they will have to throw a charge move to knock us out here. A Rage Fist likely will not be enough, and at this point, if they do go for it, I can swap out and Shadow Claw them all the way down, saving not only a Fire Punch and a bit of health on our Diggersby, but giving us a Hydro Cannon on our Shadow Feraligatr. Because of that, now we can also go for this Hydro Cannon against this Diggersby, or against this B-Barrel, rather, and try to Shadow Claw down. Can we do it? This is going to be so close at this point. We do get the full Shadow Claw down, once again coming out with a Hydro Cannon, which we need to throw into this Azumarill, and if this doesn't knock out, we still have that Fire Punch on our Diggersby that we were able to store in the backline, and we can just barely take the win here against this Azumarill. GG's to our opponent. Diggersby had almost nowhere to go, but because of the fact that Shadow Feraligatr is so safe, and Ariados put in a lot of work against the Annihilate, we were able to barely win that game. Our next matchup going to be an Ariados into a Galarian Moltres. This is actually a much more neutral lead than you'd expect, saying they do have access to super effective charge moves. Lunge is going to start debuffing their attack stat quite a bit, but it's not super effective. The flying and dark types kind of cancel that out. So it's just a lot of neutral damage back and forth. And if they don't end up throwing a Brave Bird here, then they're not going to knock us out with this charge move. Our opponent throwing the Ancient Power doesn't even start tickling us here. Ariados able to easily survive that and go for a Lunge to either knock them out or put them very low. Our opponent does end up surviving, but they're going to be forced to throw a charge move if they want to win this matchup. That's perfectly fine to me. I have a Diggersby and a Shadow Feraligatr in the backline, both of which are not the best answers to Galarian Moltres, so whittling this Pokemon down as much as we have is going to be very nice. In comes a Shadow Kanto Marowak, a Pokemon which is a little bit tricky to see. They have so much fast move pressure against us here, and I know as well that our Hydro Cannons will not be able to knock them out if they go shielded, which of course they will end up shielding. And now Diggersby is going to have a bit of play in the backline. It seems like they're not swapping out just yet. That might mean there's like a Galarian Corsola or maybe a Poison type in the back. If that is the case, I have to hope that I can still have enough HP to take that out later on. Our opponent once again throwing a Bone Club against us. I know that they're not in range where a Scorching Sands would knock out, which is very unfortunate. If we could knock them out or draw a shield here, I'd be much more confident in our chances of winning this game. But I think at this point they just no-shield this and swap to whatever their final Pokemon is going to be. In comes the Scorching Sands. Our opponent trying to catch a Fire Punch, but we are able to go for the Scorching Sands. It is a Galarian Corsola. If we can get a debuff here, I can see ourselves having a very good chance at winning this game, because a debuff makes it so this Corsola needs 2 charge moves to knock us out. They won't come anywhere near knocking us out if I end up lowering their attack stat. In comes yet another Scorching Sands. We did not get a debuff on that first move. Scorching Sands number 2 ends up coming through. Yet again, no debuff here. And as I've always talked about here, it seems like Corsola, despite not being the worst matchup for Diggersby, we don't have enough damage to knock them out with 3 charge moves. They survive that attack, and 3 moves, no debuff on any single one of them. That might end up costing us here. Power Gem is going to do a decent chunk of our damage, damage, and in comes that Shadow Marowak. We can try our best to farm this down, but I mean, the thing is, I know Nightshade does more damage, and they have so much HP on that Corsola and so much energy on this Marowak, I have to end up no-shielding that attack here. In comes a Mudsap, and now we're in range where we just get completely astonished down. GG's to our opponent. That was a tricky endgame, but they were able to beat us there in the end. All right, next game, Azumarill lead. Fantastic lead matchup for us. What is this? A Dragapult as a safe swap of Pokemon, which honestly is a pretty good matchup for a Diggersby. Despite not having a lot of fast food pressure, we do resist their fast food pressure as well, and Scorching Sands, even if we get debuffed, is likely going to be able to two-shot them. Looks like Breaking Swipe did debuff our attack stat, which is kind of likely, right? I think it's like a 50% chance to debuff our attack. It's not the strongest move in the game, and because Astonish is doing nothing to us here, Diggersby is in the driver's seat right now. In comes yet another Breaking Swipe. Our opponent is going to try to debuff us. Maybe if they want to shield their way through this matchup, they can, but I have a Shadow Feraligatr in the back too. It's not like I need switch advantage against this Azumarill. In fact, if they end up letting this through, I'm just going to swap out because I don't want to give them a farm down. In the backline, a Drifblim. Our opponent giving us the alignment we want anyway. GG's to them. We would have won that game, I think, even if they didn't end up swapping out to Drifblim, because we could just take down 2 shields, have a ton of energy on our Shadow Gator, but we were able to win that one nonetheless. In comes an Annihilate as the next lead of the game, and we're going to try our best here with our Trailblazers to neutralize this Pokemon, make it so our Diggersby does not have to deal with this really threatening Pokemon in the backline. Same with our Shadow Feraligatr. Despite having super effective Shadow Claw damage, it's not really the best matchup to be in, and I'd much rather take these resisted counters with my Ariados. In comes yet another Trailblazer. Our opponent likely has to respect this move. I could have gone for a Lunge bait, but it is resisted by both Ghost and Fighting type damage, so a very risky bait if I would have gone for it. I'm just going to go for a guaranteed shield with that move, and now that I'm at +2 and they're so low, there's a chance Lunge could knock out, so I'm going to start kind of debuffing them here just in case we need to neutralize this with Shadow Claws. This is going to make them do a little bit less damage to our Gator later on. Oh, they actually ended up catching on a Shadow Drapion. I didn't even see that, which, I mean, since I threw a Lunge, is totally fine by me. We've already neutralized a ton of that Annihilate. We've neutralized this Drapion so incredibly hard. Our opponent is in a bit of a tricky spot here. What are they going to bring in? Does the Annihilate come back in to try to counter us down, or do they bring in whatever their final Pokemon is? They bring in Annihilate? No way. We have the ability to go for another Lunge against this Pokemon. Ariados 2v1ing right now, taking out 2 complete Pokemon. In the back, a Wigglytuff as well. Ariados just showing once again, if you don't respect it can just start ramping up, debuffing, one-shotting. This Pokemon is crazy. Our opponent hasn't quite top lefted yet when they see our Diggersby, but the thing is, Diggersby into Wigglytuff is such a good matchup, and we also have a Shadow Feraligatr in the back that is going to be able to easily close things out here, especially after all this quick attack damage has easily put them into range where a Hydro Cannon would knock out. Our opponent going for an Icy Wind that doesn't even come close to knocking us out here. We can go for a Scorching Sands, save our shield for a Shadow Feraligatr, and just try our best to go for a Hydro Cannon. At this point, though, thanks to Ariados is giving us such a good lead in the start of this game, we are able to win that one. GG's to our opponent. Very good showcase of what Ariados can do. Speaking of a showcase of Ariados, a Dugong in the lead on the next game, and our opponent opting to stay in here. Always love to see that. We don't want this anywhere near our Diggersby. Our Shadow Feraligatr can deal with Dugong if they do end up swapping out, especially after landing a Trailblaze, but it's going to be interesting to see how they want to play this one out. In comes an Icy Wind. They have a lot of neutral damage against us. If I would have gone for a Lunge first, this would do a little bit less damage to us, but I think you do have to go for 2 Trailblazes in the Zero Shield matchup if you want to win it. So I will just play that out, try to go for the boosts on our Ariados, despite getting debuffed with that Icy Wind. Once again, we can boost our own attack stat with Trailblaze. They actually opted to shield that move up here, and I'm totally fine with that. I love shield advantage Shadow Feraligatr. All I have to do now is come in with our Gator, go for a huge farm down, and use this energy to hopefully sweep whatever is in the back. Our opponent is staying in for just a second. That likely means they're not that confident against our Shadow Gator in the backline. This could be an Icy Wind bait, but either way, I want to have as much HP and energy on our Gator as possible. And good news for us, they come in with the Shadow Annihilate right now to try to drain our energy. That means that we can go for 2 Hydro Cannons, likely knock them out, or at least put them so low that our Diggersby does not have to deal with them. In comes our Diggersby to catch the Rage Fist here. This is a good catch, although because we have quick attack, we're probably going to take a ton of counter damage here too, which is absolutely terrible for us. With that said, we do get a lot of energy. We have a bit of energy on our Shadow Gator as well, and in comes a Shadow Kanto Marowak. This Pokemon is a little scary here with how low HP I have of both my Diggersby and my Shadow Feraligatr right now, but Scorching Sands will put them low, and if they don't shield a Fire Punch, at this point I can just go for a full fast move farm down. Fire Punch coming through right now. Our opponent is going to try their best to win this game, but I think if they no-shield this, that is just going to be quick attack and Shadow Claw farm down range. At this point, I can also just shield this move up. I know Dugong is energy dry. I just have to tap my screen, make sure I get as much fast pressure as I can. In comes the Dugong. We Shadow Claw them all the way down, and Marowak at this point is just 1 Shadow Claw away from getting KO. GG's to our opponent. Next game, Ariados up against a Shadow Drapion, another Pokemon that is one of the best things to see here, mainly because I don't want to deal with this with our Shadow Feraligatr, and I know Lunge is going to start adding up over time. Our opponent throwing instantly with the Aqua Tail. That is exactly how you're supposed to play this matchup out. Go for the non-debuffed move first, and then try to go for a crunch before my second lunge. This is going to be a very neutral matchup here, but I know the backlines generally are going to be kind of weak to Ariados. I don't want to let it go down so early on, so I will shield up this next attack, try our best to brute force our way through their poison-type Pokemon, and see if we have any play against whatever they have in the backline. Trailblades is going to be thrown. I want to throw this as soon as I can here to guarantee that if they do end up letting this go, I can go for a full Poison Sting down and get a bit of energy to come out of this matchup. Maybe I can go for a lunge or a Trailblaze against whatever comes in. Gonna be an Annihilate actually that ends up coming in here. A little bit scary at this point though, because I know Annihilate is a Pokemon that has a lot of play in my backline here, and our Ariados is already down shields. We can try to go for a Trailblaze to get a shield from them there, but this is such a bad situation to be in. I'm actually going to shield up this Rage Fist, trying our best to start whittling down this Pokemon. I'm going to go for a Lunge bait. This is so risky, though. Lunge is not even going to come close to knocking them out. They opt to no-shield it, so we do lower their attack stat, but they can just boost it right back up here. This is looking so incredibly bad for us right now. In comes the Rage Fist. It knocks us out. Shadow Feraligatr has a lot of work to do to try to farm them all the way down. Can we do it? We're going to try to go for another Rage Fist catch, which, while I think is a good play, they are double, maybe even triple boosted. I have completely forgot now with our Lunge and their Rage Fist what their attack stat is looking like, but then they swap out to their Superior Pokemon, which obviously does have a ton of play against our backline as well. Ariados had so much play into their whole team, but our backline is kind of falling apart right now. Superior is going to be able to put us into very low HP range with a Frenzy Plant, and at this point, all they need to do is no-shield everything, invest in their Superior against our potential Shadow Feraligatr's Ice Beam, and they should be able to win the game. At this point, Fire Punch, if it drew a shield, we could win the game because I could swap out, go for an Ice Beam, but because they ended up no-shielding very smartly, they were able to win that game. Alright, next game, once again, a Shadow Drapion in the lead. We have to try to use our Ariados to the best of its ability. Once again, we have seen what it can do here, and our opponent throwing instantly with a charge move. I'm going to shield it up this time just to see how it plays out. Honestly, I don't really know what the best play is with this matchup. I think after learning how this plays out, going for the no-shield on that Aqua Tail as the Ariados is still the play. The debuff crunch still does do more damage, I believe, so that was a bit of a misplay by me to end up shielding that attack, but I guess now we will find out. In comes a crunch here in just a second. Our opponent is going to play out this matchup once again the way I think you're supposed to as the Drapion, and Trailblaze is going to be able to either get the knockout or put them very low and boost our attack stat. In comes the Trailblaze here. Our opponent does opt to shield it up, actually. Very interesting. I'm going to try to catch the Aqua Tail with our Shadow Feraligatr. Our opponent is going to not like that play unless they threw the crunch. Unfortunately for us, we ended up catching a crunch on our Shadow Gator instead, and we do bait out a Corsola, which, honestly, I wish we didn't waste our Shadow Feraligatr this much, because it seems like their backline must be just a little bit weak to our Shadow Gator. With that said, I can build up a lot of energy with our Diggersby and try our best to still win this game. I know we have a bit of our Ariados alive as well. Is there any chance the backline is going to be a pick that our Diggersby has play into? With that said, we've already seen the lead. Wasn't it a Shadow Drapion lead and a Corsola in the backline? There's almost no way their final Pokemon's also going to be weak to this Diggersby. It's likely actually going to be an answer. Maybe like an Azumarill, Dugong, a pick like that. Although if it is one of those two Pokemon, Ariados should still have a decent amount of wiggle room this game. In comes the next Scorching Sands here. Our opponent is going to opt to let it go. Corsola goes down, and yeah, it's going to be an Azumarill in the backline. That is a very, very common Pokemon to see paired with a Shadow Drapion, and in comes our first Scorching Sands. Our opponent is going to opt to let it go. I have a bit of energy on our Ariados, and I'm going to go for the Trailblaze here, trying our best to whittle down this Azumarill even more. Trailblaze ends up landing. I guess that's probably a smart play, right? They know that I can reach another Trailblaze now. I was expecting our opponent to catch on 5, but unfortunately they ended up catching after the 6th one instead, or at least swapping out after the 6th, which means we could have landed a Trailblaze there against them. Bit of a misplay by me. There's still a chance we can win this game, but I should have just instantly Trailblazer. I thought they'd call that, but they didn't, and I misplayed because of this here. I now have to hope that our Diggersby can somehow survive long enough to get to 2 Fire Punches to win this game. Our opponent has a lot of HP left over. Ice Beam is going to do a massive amount of damage to our Diggersby, and if we can reach 2 Fire Punches, we win, but that Ice Beam puts us so low, I know I need to be 2 away from the next Fire Punch if I want any chance of reaching the charge move and knocking out this Azumarill. They opt to shield up that first Fire Punch, makes sense, and I barely reached the next Fire Punch. This game would have been so much easier if I would have instantly fired that Trailblaze into the Azumarill and drew a shield there, but we still were able to barely clinch out the end game. GG's to our opponent. That was such a close one. Alright, next game, Ariados up against a Malamar in the lead. Honestly, while this is not a bad lead, it is a little bit of an awkward one, because we know that Malamar does have access to super effective Psywave. They actually end up catching on a Drapion there, it looks like, as well, which is another thing they can do, and another thing they really like to do, it seems like, in that matchup. At this point, though, just build up a little bit more energy, try to catch a crunch on our Diggersby if we can, and use a bit more energy in the backline with our Ariados, potentially against that Malamar later on this game. They ended up going for an Aqua Tail, obviously, so that's a little bit annoying, but because they are debuffed, it's not going to do quite as much damage to us, and we can build up a bit more energy, go for Fire Punches against the Shadow Drapion, and try to use our Diggersby as a way to whittle down their team. Next Fire Punch is going to come through right before the third Aqua Tail. I'd rather stay out of range where they can wave us down, and so we're going to go for the Fire Punch and try to knock out the Shadow Drapion, and then try our best as well to go for a Scorching Sands before they throw a charge move. Unfortunately, though, they are very good at their counts. They throw likely a superpower here against us, and that is going to knock out our Diggersby. We have energy on Ariados. They have debuffed their attack stat, so they are likely going to swap out, but what the heck? They have an ABA weak 2 Ariados team here with an Azumarill on the backline. I'm just going to store up as much energy as I can and then swap out to our Shadow Feraligatr. Shadow Feraligatr is also very strong into both Azumarill and Malamar here, so I'm just going to kind of sack it and instead use it as a way to get shields from these Pokemon if possible. Malamar should be in a pretty good matchup here for our Ariados with how much energy we have. We have basically 2 lunges plus 1 Poison Sting loaded, about 100 energy, as much as you can have here. So our Gator is going to try its best, whittle down this Azumarill so our Ariados gets a 1v1 against Malamar later on. We also are going to be able to come out of this matchup potentially with a Hydro Cannon, which, if it goes unshielded, will put that Malamar into fast food farm down range. So they're going to be forced to shield up that move. They do come in instantly with Malamar. I called it right away through this Hydro Cannon before they could sidewave us down, and we can get the shield and then go for a double lunge to knock out Malamar here. This game should be ours at this point. Lunge will easily one-shot this Pokemon. Our opponent, realizing that, does end up top-lefting. GG's to them. Alright, next matchup here against one of the best players in the world and one of my best friends in the Pokemon Go community, Mr. Dunebug97, leading the Annihilate. This Pokemon is one of his signature picks, and Ariados is going to try its best to take it down. Ariados' first Trailblaze is going to get no-shielded. It makes a lot of sense to let that first move through because Trailblaze does start ramping up my attack stat, and likely going to see a Rage Fist for them to ramp up their own attack stat here. Luckily, Ariados is able to outpace these Rage Fists, and I'm going to go for a cheeky lunge bait. Trailblaze at this point would come close, if not just straight up knock out the Annihilate, and I know they likely want to shield up this move, which is exactly what's going to happen. If they're going to shield, I'm going to shield. They likely can get their attack stat back up to +1, but because of our lunge bait, this is looking like a much better matchup than it could otherwise be. I'm going to go for the guaranteed shield or knockout now, though. Go for this Trailblaze and see how Dunebug wants to play this out. Trailblaze will end up drawing the shield, and that is exactly what I want to see. I love using a shield advantage Shadow Feraligatr in a lot of my games, so I can just let this go, get a full Shadow Claw down, and hopefully shield advantage Shadow Feraligatr should be able to sweep the endgame. In comes our Gator here. 3 Shadow Claws is all it takes. All of those counters are still going to do a massive amount of damage to us. In comes a Shadow Drapion, a Pokemon that's very squishy. If he has a very, very, very good Shadow Drapion, there's a chance he can survive a Hydro Cannon after 9 Shadow Claws. Let's see what's going to happen. Aqua Tail does end up drawing our shield, but he makes a catch, a fantastic catch on Dugong. With that said, because he did make this catch here, we should be in a very good spot. All I have to do is knock out this Dugong, and then Diggersby should be able to knock out that Drapion later on this game, but because Dugong is such a bulky pick, I think I will need 3 Hydro Cannons to knock this Pokemon out. Hydro Cannon number 2 comes through, and now I'm going to try to CMP this next Hydro Cannon. We are 1 Shadow Claw away from the next Hydro here, so unless Dunebug throws energy against our Shadow Feraligatr, we can just get a full Gator sweep this game. In comes a Drapion, but he ends up top lefting. GG's to him. Very fun matchup. Shadow Gator showing why it is such a strong pick, especially when paired alongside a Pokemon like Ariados, which can give it a shield advantage, which is exactly what you want to see. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you've been enjoying videos like this on the channel, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps out a ton, and I would love to see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching, though. Take care, and I'll see you later.